Hello and welcome to tutorial 3 in this series. Today we're going to be writing a very simple computer game that involves two players. Each player rolls a dice, and start this game. We're just going to concentrate on getting each player to roll a dice. Now, a dice, when it rolls, obviously is purely by chance, so we're going to have to import a module, in other words, a library of code that generates random numbers. And you did touch on this in your very first lesson in Python when you used the import statement, and we are going to be using the import statement today. And we're going to be importing what's called the random module. So we will be using this statement here. If you want to do your own coding during this video, then please feel free to stop and start the video as you see fit. So we're going to be making a simple game that involves two players who roll a dice. They roll a dice each, and we're going to be writing the code to simulate that situation. So let's look at the steps that are involved. The steps involved are, we're going to firstly import the random module, so here. Secondly, we're going to create a new variable to store the dice roll. So a dice has got 6 sides, so we're going to store whatever number the random generator picks from 1 to 6. Well, we're just going to create the variable there actually, and we're going to store it when we call the randint function, the random integer function, when we pass in our arguments, in other words, what numbers we want to generate a number between, which is between 1 and between 6, and put the result in the score variable. And finally, we are going to print whatever the score was to the output window here. Okay, so let's start by creating that variable called score and setting it with a value of 0, like so. We're then going to use the random module by calling one of the functions that are available in the random module, and that's a randomize an integer. You might remember we went through what an integer was. An integer is a whole number. So we want to pick a random number. So we say put into score a random number using the random integer function. It's just randint. And then pass in what numbers you want to pick a random number between. So we want to pick it between 1 and 6. Okay. Now I'm just going to very quickly show you the randint function just by using, I'm going to get out of PyScript a minute, I'm just going to use idle just to show you this, and I'm just going to use the interactive interpreter. Okay, so if I run this function, you see between 1 and 6, this is giving me a random number every time I run it between 1 and 6. Similarly, I can also run it using a random number between 1 and 100. The random number generator will do it. It's not fussy. It will do whatever you. Oops, let me just copy that. It will do whatever you ask it to do. So between 1 and 100, there they all go. Let me clear this. Go down a wee bit. Actually, let me clear that one. So let's do it again. Okay, random between random.randint. Oh, it's yeah, it's not liking that because I've shut it. I should have imported the random number generator. Excuse me. Run that. Okay, well, I think you get the picture. Okay, so that's going to pick a random number between 1 and 6, and it's going to put whatever it comes up with into a variable called score. And then finally, all we need to do is to print the score variable. So let's do that. Okay, so this is for player 1, print whatever was score. Okay, so let's say print score. Okay, let's run our code. Here we go. On that occasion, it ran 1. This occasion it was 4. Again, 1 again. And 4. Indeed, it's random. And 1, believe it or not, it is random. And 4. Gosh, this is unusual. And 5. And 3, and so on. So it's randomly picking a number. Okay? I think it's not particularly exciting, and we want our first player to play first, and then we want player 2 to play second. So let's add in a string. Print player 1. Okay, so that's player 1's go. Player 1. Okay, and now of course we want player 2, and player 2's turn is exactly the same as player 1's. So what we can do is we can just copy that code and just change player 1 to player 2. And now we've got 2 players playing. Let's just run that code. Okay, there we go. Right, and as you can see, it's not playing in quite the way that I'd described at the start of the tutorial, because it's rolling both players' dice at the same time. And really, we need some way of halting the code so that player 1 has a go, and then player 2 has a go. So how can we do that? Well, we've already touched on our prompting the user. And if we prompt the user, a prompt will halt the code. So what we can say is, let's just say input, and let's give a message, okay? Let's say hit enter to roll. Hit enter to roll player 1, okay? That's unit, okay? And then that will halt the code. Now, it'll only halt the code. If I show you what that does, let me clear this window. It will halt the code, like so. Hit enter to roll player 1. It's halted the code. Notice there's no input. Or output, I should say. It's not output. Let's hit enter. Okay, and then both players roll. So what we need to do is to halt it before it's player 2's turn. And so we can use that line of code there, and just change that to player 2. Just take a look at that code now and see if you can see how that is going to affect things. Let's just clear this out and let's show you how that runs. Okay, so here we go. Right, so here's player 1. Let's just move that output window away. Okay, hit enter to roll player 1. There's player 1's go. And if I place my window slightly better, you'll see player 1 rolls a 4. And player 2 rolls a 1. So in that case, player 1 has won by rolling a 4. Okay, so what if we wanted to play this multiple times? We wanted to keep rolling the dice, so it goes player 1, player 2, player 1, then player 2, then player 1, then player 2, and so on. Well, we could just keep repeating the code. So let's copy this code here. Okay, let's do 3 sets of rolls, shall we? Okay, so we've repeated our code 3 times, and if I zoom out here, you'll see how much code has gone into this program. Now that's how much code we've got now to do 3 rolls of the dice. Okay, so let's clear this. Let's run our code and let's see these 3 rolls. Okay, here we go. So right, here's roll 1. Okay, here's roll 2. Here's roll 3. Yeah, roll 4. There'll be 6 in all. Yeah, roll 5. And roll 6, and then our program has ended. Okay. Now, this is something that you want to really try and avoid in your programming, is having many repeating lines of code. And we can do that by, as this code is, there are 3 lines that are repeated 6 times for each roll of the dice. We can enclose those 3 lines of code in what's called a procedure, and we can then call that procedure with just one very simple line of code rather than having to repeat all these lines. If I show you how we do that, and you'll see, just take a note of my output of my program here. You can see it's just player 1, player 2. Now we're gonna recreate this output, but with far less code by using this technique of writing procedures. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take out all of those lines. So I've gone one too far there. I'm going to take all of these lines. So I've just got one turn. As you can see, there's one turn. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use this keyword, which is important that you remember this. And the keyword is DEF, and it stands for, it's short for define. So I'm going to say player one. I'm just going to say define player one turn. Player one. Okay, define player one. And then my procedures always have a set of parentheses after them, like so. When I use a procedure, so the code doesn't run until I want it to, I have to indent this code, and I can indent it using a tab. This is the keyboard, key on the keyboard with two arrows pointing in opposite directions. So I tab that one in there, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. That is my procedure written, and I've still got a red line here. The reason for that is I need a colon. So let me zoom it back in again so you can see that. And that's what my procedure looks like. Now, my procedure for my second player is exactly the same, except I'm going to call it player 2. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that code, and I'm going to paste it in. So I'm going to call it player 2. Okay, and there are my two procedures. So player 1 procedure and player 2 procedure. Now, if I call one of these procedures to run down here, let's just call it. Let's just call player 1. Let's just have a look at the output. So player 1, this is how you call a procedure. It's by using the name of the procedure followed by the two brackets that come after it, like so. And then let's take our window over here, and so we can have a look at the output. Okay, just make a note of the output here. This was from, if I move this over a bit, this was from all of our about 12 sets of lines of code. Now let's have a look at what our output is for this one. Okay, so let's play that. Okay, hit enter to roll. It behaves exactly as it did before. Let's hit enter to roll. And then, there you go, player 1 is 2, and then the program has ended, because we've only actually run these lines of code here. Okay? And what we want to do is we want to then, after we've run those lines of code, we then want to run these lines of code. Okay? So, let's run them both. So I'm just going to, underneath here, I'm just going to call the second procedure now, so player 2. Okay, and then I'm going to hit enter. Hit enter to roll, player 1. Yeah, okay. Hit enter to roll, player 1. Oh, look what I've done. I haven't changed over my strings. There we go, player 2. Player 2. Okay, let's try again. Okay, I'm going to clear this off because it's getting a bit confusing. Let's roll. Okay, here we go. Let's run. Hit enter to roll, player 1. Player 1 rolls a 6. Hit enter to roll, player 2. Okay, and my program has ended. Now, what I can do is I've cut down on the number of lines of code that I'm running. But what I can also do is I can get these turns to happen alternately forevermore by simply, once this player 1 turn has gone, I want it to call player 2 straight after it. And once this player 1, I'm going to cut that player 1 turn from there. Okay. So it's going to alternate. In other words, player 1's turn will run, then player 2's will run, then player 1's will run, and so on. So let's just run our code and let's see what happens. Let me clear this. Let's just run our code and see what happens. Okay. Oh, look at that. Nothing. No output. And the reason is that there's no output is we need to call one of the procedures in order to start off the cycle of going player 1, player 2. So down here, I'm going to call this first one here player 1. And I'm going to put it in with no indent. Okay? No indent. And let's see what happens now. What are you expecting to happen? Have a think about that. Okay, let's see what happens. So let's run the function, or run the procedures, I should say. Hit enter to player 1. Hit enter to roll player 2. Hit enter run player 1. So the one procedure, the first procedure, is calling the second procedure, and then the second procedure is calling the first procedure, which in turn is calling the second procedure, which in turn is calling the first procedure, and so on. So we've created a game where one player rolls a dice, then the next player rolls a dice, then the next player rolls a dice, and so on. So I'd like you to try and recreate this game, and then I'd like you to have a look at the worksheet for this lesson, because there's some exercises on there I'd like you to have a go at using what you've learned in this exercise as a guide. Okay, it'll be in the usual format of pink task, green task, and blue task. So that's it for today. I'm going to sign off, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.